Dad. But first, is it wrong for kids as young as 4 years old, to be asked if they're gay, lesbian or trans? Time now for the head-to-head. And astonishing new documents have revealed that Scottish primary schools are signing up to a shocking scheme that encourages them to appoint pupils as, quote, LGBT champions, asking kids as young as 4 if they're gay, lesbian or trans. The scheme is the brainchild of the taxpayer-funded charity LGBT Youth Scotland, which charges schools up to £2,000 a pop for membership of its LGBT Charter for Education. So each school that joins must appoint at least 2 children as so-called LGBT champions, with schools also encouraged to ask pupils if they're gay, lesbian or trans. And to make matters even worse, the schools are also asked to provide evidence of so-called LGBT-safe spaces, such as gender-neutral toilets. It comes as Scotland's only gender clinic today paused the prescription of puberty blockers after the Cass report concluded that vulnerable kids had been given the harmful drugs based on, quote, weak evidence. So that long overdue decision brings Scotland into line with England, where puberty blockers have, of course, been banned since March this year, and only after Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf dragged his heels on the issue, leaving it up to the clinicians to decide what to do. So, as Scottish primary schools appoint kids as LGBT champions, is it wrong for pupils as young as 4 to be asked if they're gay, lesbian or trans? Let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/yoursay or tweet me at gbnews while you're there, and why not vote in our poll? I'll bring you those results in just a few minutes. But first, to do battle on this, I'm joined by the trans teacher and journalist Debbie Hayson and human rights activist Peter Tatchell. Peter, let's start with you, my friend. 4 years old, is it OK to ask them if they're gay or trans?
Well, this is about an education programme in schools to combat bullying and prejudice. It's very much required because there are shocking levels of homophobia, biphobia and transphobia in Scottish schools. Between 13 and 19% of all LGBT plus kids in Scotland leave school prematurely because of the hostility they face. Only 1 in 10 rate their school experience as good. So this is all about combating prejudice and bullying. It is not forcing anybody to do anything. The scheme is entirely optional, it's voluntary, no one is forced to participate. Where it does take place, it takes place with the support and agreement of the pupils, primarily and almost entirely secondary school pupils, not primary school.
OK, right, so let me just clarify. You are happy with asking 4-year-old kids if they're gay, bi or trans?
There's no evidence that's being done. I searched to try and find evidence of that. There's no evidence that.
Yes, there is. Peter, let me tell you something. This is from the LGBT Youth Scotland's own documents. You can see it on their website. It's on the screen now if anyone's watching at home. It's that the charity says 200 Scottish secondaries, more than half of the national total, and over 40 primary schools being 4, 5, 6-year-olds, have joined its LGBT Charter for Education. In the paperwork, it says, quote, you should consider asking pupils if they are part of the LGBT community in order to establish whether bullying affects those pupils. Do you agree with that, Peter Tatchell?
I do not agree with 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds being asked those questions, and indeed, that document is intended for secondary levels,
no,
not
it's not.
for primary levels.
I've just said to you, it's 40 primary schools as well. Debbie Hayson, what do you make of this?
Those specific questions are only for secondary school pupils, and I would say that that is not appropriate for primary school. The LGBT Youth Scotland is pioneered by a principle of age-appropriate education. OK. So they would not ask those questions of very young children. OK, well, that's not what the document says. But Debbie Hayson, let me get your thoughts on this. What do you make of this LGBT Youth Scotland and the fact that they are potentially asking 4, 5, 6-year-olds whether they want to be gay, bi or trans? I'd argue you shouldn't be asking them or even speaking to them about heterosexual relationships. Let kids be kids. Why do you want to talk about sex and relationships with young kids?
Well, you should be letting children grow up. If there's issues with bullying, let's deal with the bullying. But we shouldn't be imposing on any children this belief system that they've got to choose an identity, choose a team in which to be a member of, or be an ally of another team. These are children, and children need the space to grow up before we start imposing adult ideas on them about relationships. Let them grow up first, please.
Peter, what age is acceptable for you to start speaking to kids about whether they're gay, bi or trans?
I would say at secondary level, because already by that age, some young people are aware that they're LGBT or T.
So what age is that? Can you just confirm?
Sorry?
What age would that be? Secondary, like sort of 10, 11, 12?
11, 12, but no one should be forced or pressured. This should be an option. They shouldn't be actually asked the question. They should be invited to come to classes and where LGBT issues are discussed. It's up to them whether they disclose it or not. No one should be pressured. It should be entirely voluntary. This is not about indoctrination. This is about supporting LGBT plus kids in Scotland who, as I said, get a very raw deal. There's so much bullying. We need to encourage understanding and acceptance to end that bullying. So educating young LGBT kids and young straight kids about that is a good way to do it, because the evidence shows that where this program has been implemented, LGBT plus kids feel much better about themselves, there's less bullying, they stay on longer at school, they don't feel forced to leave. So that's a win-win-win for everyone.
Debbie Hayton, same question to you as a trans woman. What is an acceptable age to start asking kids about sex and sexual relationships?
Well, I think you've said that, asking them about sex and sexual relationships. What we should be teaching children at an appropriate age is about relationships and about those relationships. What worries me about the pack that I've seen here is that it's asking children, where do you fit into this? And that's what we shouldn't be doing. That's not the role of schools. Schools are there to teach children, not to ask children, where do you fit into this? Now, which age this is coming in at is a matter of conjecture. But my concern would be that too soon children feel obliged to pick a team, choose a letter to identify with or support. That's what I'm concerned about.
Peter, as we've seen with the CAS review and puberty blockers at the Tavistock in England, you know, a lot of these young kids are confused, vulnerable, unhappy for various reasons. I mean, 35% of them at the Tavistock were reported to have autism, for example. I'm concerned and worried that we're polluting kids' minds with information on sex and, you know, relationships, not just trans or gay relationships, any kind of sexual relationship. Just let kids be kids. Why can't... I mean, what is it with adults who want to speak to kids about sex? What's going on there? I just don't get it. It blows my mind.
I agree. Primary school kids should not be discussing sex. And indeed, in my experience, the schools that I go into, at primary level, they just talk about bodily changes at puberty. They talk about different kinds of families. Some will be mum and dad, some will be same-sex parents, some will be single parents. They do not talk about sex. That's scaremongering. Quite rightly, sex should be off the agenda when it comes to primary school pupils. But when it comes to secondary pupils, when they're older, maybe 14, 15 or 16, we do have to talk about sex, about preventing unwanted pregnancies.
Well, that's a different ballgame,
preventing STIs and HIV, teaching young people about consent so that people are not pressured into sex, that people have a right to say no to sex. And those are the things that are being taught in schools in Scotland and England and Wales as well. And that's a good thing, because it's all about young people's welfare. We want young people to have happy, healthy relationships. We want to end abuse. We want to end the unwanted pregnancies and sexually transmitted infections. Those are not good things. And to avoid them, young people need education.
OK. All right, Peter, look, I'm glad, in all honesty, you agree that 4-year-olds shouldn't be spoken to about whether they're gay, bi or trans, but the facts speak for themselves. The story is true because it's from this charity's own paperwork. There are 40 primary schools, children of 4, 5 years, 6-year-olds, who are being spoken to by adults about whether they're gay, bi or trans. It's an absolute scandal.
Yeah, and not in primary school, Ben. Not in primary school.
Peter, read the paperwork. It's all there in black and white. I don't know why you keep saying that.
It doesn't say primary school. Yep. That's meant for secondary school.
It does. I'm sorry, Peter, it does. I've said to you it does. It's 40 primary schools and half of the nation's secondary schools. Peter Thatchell, thank you for joining us. Debbie Hayton, appreciate you being with us. A quick word from the Scottish Government. They've said in a statement to us, we are committed to doing everything we can to make Scotland the best place to grow up for LGBTQI+ young people. This includes funding LGBT Youth Scotland to deliver a range of projects such as LGBT Charter Programme. Very good, very good. We reached out to LGBT Youth Scotland for comment but received no response. Let's see what you've been saying. Who do you agree with? Is it wrong for pupils as young as 4 to be asked if they're gay, lesbian or trans? Barry on X says anyone asking a kid as young as 4 if they're gay, lesbian or trans needs to be put on a watch list. and banned from being allowed anywhere near a primary school. Barry, I think I agree with you. Matt on X says, as a gay man myself, the more these people whip up tensions, the more the likes of me and many others will get caught in the crossfire and treat as if we endorse this madness when we don't. It needs to stop. It needs to stop. Your verdict is now in. Absolutely emphatic. 95% of you agree that it's wrong for pupils as young as 4 to be asked if they're gay, lesbian or trans. 5% of you, may I say, who are you, the 5%? 5% of you say that is OK. Actually, that's quite concerning. I was hoping for 100%. But anyway, coming up...